What's going on, everybody? Jared Barnes here, host of the Jared Barnes Show. Thanks for listening today. Today is Monday, January 11th, one day after the wildcard weekend kind of just ended, and it wasn't a fantastic weekend for everybody. A couple teams moved on. 6 teams moved on. Now there is 8 teams left in the NFL. Congrats to you if your team did. And I completely feel for you and know how you feel right now if your team did not. Was supposed to record an episode last night, and then after watching that Steelers game, really did not feel up to it. Was kind of more in a depressed mood and realized that I wasn't going to give you guys great content if I wasn't feeling like talking on the mic. So I waited, let stuff kind of sit, and now I'm ready to talk. Let's go. So, the big news of today is Doug Pederson has now been fired. This is 2 weeks removed from his shenanigans on Sunday Night Football. And now this is the 7th head coaching vacancy that has opened up this offseason. Now, Jeffrey Lurie and Doug Pederson, their outlook for the future, I think, was completely different, and that's one of the reasons that they parted ways. Doug Pederson seems to want Wentz as the future because he said he's unsure of the future of the quarterback position in Philly if they moved on from Wentz. It feels like the organization wants maybe to stick with Jalen, but I guess reports coming out from Jeremy Fowler of ESPN seems like Carson Wentz has a better chance of staying now than when Pederson was there. It makes no sense to me, but I feel like, Jalen's the guy in Philly for the future. They're going to have to move on from Wentz. And here's my thoughts on the Pederson firing. Let's be honest. It's not a move that shocked me. I don't feel like it's a move that shocked many people. They kind of laid the groundwork leading into yesterday when the news leaked that Pederson was going to meet with the owners, and it was likely that they didn't think he was going to remain. And they laid that groundwork so that today it wasn't a big firestorm news thing, even though it's pretty big in the news world right now. It's not this, whoa, they fired Doug Pederson. It's just not. And it would have been very hard for him to come back to that team anyways. It would have been very hard for him to come back into that locker room after the way this Eagles season ended. And I'm beginning to wonder now if some of the players on that team didn't start going to management above Pederson and being like, hey, we don't want this guy. We do not want this guy to be the head coach of our football team any longer. It wouldn't shock me if that happened, although I can't confirm or deny that did happen because that information has not been leaked as of yet. But the team kind of feels divided. The team kind of feels like they're in a bad spot here, and Eagles are not in a great place salary cap-wise, and the future looks so-so over the next year or two. I think a couple Eagles players will be moved this offseason. I think Carson Wentz is the big name that will be out of Philly after this offseason. I think Zach Ertz is a name to watch as well. Earlier in the year, he seemed very unhappy and wanting to get out of there anyways. I feel like he's been replaced a little by Dallas Goedert. Dallas Goedert's a young tight end in the league, and it seems like Dallas Goedert is already the number one tight end on the team, and Zach Ertz has been a little pushed off and given less targets and given less looks because of Dallas Goedert's presence. I think Jason Kelce is also going to be another name to look at. I don't know what his salary is. I just have this feeling that Jason Kelce won't necessarily be on the Eagles starting next season, and that's a shame because Jason Kelce, great leader, great center, but he's another one of those pieces that might be moved. I mean, there's going to be quite a bit of movement and action from the Eagles this offseason, and it starts today. They got to look for a head coach now. And it's come out that I think Jeffrey Lurie said that, Deuce Staley should definitely be considered as a head coaching candidate. So that's news right there in itself. So I'm going to be intrigued to kind of watch the organization and what the Eagles do here, because I think they're going to have to do a soft rebuild moving forward. So it's going to be interesting to watch to see what they do. But it seems like Jeffrey Lurie is very confident in Howie Roseman as his GM, and it feels like he is very confident that this team could be a dominant team moving forward, because that is what he said in his statement. He is very very confident. I'm also intrigued to watch Doug Pederson over the next couple weeks as he probably lines up for interviews because, he's Doug Pederson. He just won a Super Bowl 3-4 years ago. So it's going to be intriguing to see what happens with him. But, who in the NFL world is important. And Doug Pederson has close connections with Jets GM Joe Douglas. Now, I hope for the Jets' sake that they do not hire Doug Pederson. I want them to hire a younger guy and maybe somebody different. I don't want them to hire Doug Pederson at all, but it wouldn't shock me in the slightest if they did, because who in the world of coaching and who in the world of GMs is very, very important. And Joe Douglas and Doug Pederson's relationship could very much come into play there. Some other news around the NFL today. Dan Quinn is meeting with the Dallas Brass in person today. He was on a flight earlier this morning, and he spent a couple hours on Zoom with them in an interview for the Dallas Cowboys defensive coordinator position. I would not be shocked if Dan Quinn if he ends up at the job, I won't be shocked at all. If it doesn't happen within the next 2 days, I'll be very shocked because it feels like it's moving very quickly for them. And I like Dan Quinn as a defensive guy, but as a head coach, he just wasn't it. I think that would be a great addition to the Mike McCarthy staff. A great addition. I don't know how Cowboys fans feel, but that's just my personal opinion on it. Now, I think the Nickelodeon game, it seemed to be very well received. And I hope that the NFL does more stuff like this in the future moving forward. Let's be honest, that Saints-Bears game, if you are not a fan of one of those teams and you're watching it, man, what a boring game it was. And, one of the only reasons I was even excited for the game was the Nickelodeon broadcast, to see what they did. And I stuck around for the entire thing. I kept tuning. I flipped back and forth because every once in a while, it did get old because that, shout out to her, but that one girl in the middle of Mr. Eagle and Burleson was just a little tough for me to handle because it did seem like she was there for the purpose of the kids. But hey, good for the kids getting this opportunity of a game on Nickelodeon. Exciting for them. But man, as a kid, I would have loved this. I love the Slime Zone. We need more of those in the future. I just hope that Nickelodeon gets another game next year, maybe 2. Maybe all of them. Now, they would never do that, but I very much enjoyed the Nickelodeon broadcast. And I can't remember his name. It's Iron Eagle's son. He did a great job. And him and Nate Burleson just throwing those Nick references in there was, as a person that watched Nick growing up as a kid and saw a lot of these shows that they were referring to, man, it was something. It was fun for me. So I loved every second of it. And I'm excited for the future of the league if they do stuff like that, because that was very cool. Now, Kevin Stefanski is on track to return to the Browns this week. They're going to need him for sure this week, as they are going to have to take on the Kansas City Chiefs in Arrowhead Stadium. Now, what a run it was for the Browns. But let's be honest here. Y'all ain't beating the Chiefs. So calm it down. Had to throw that in there. And I have an interesting NBA take here. Now, I'm going to get into this NBA take before I get into my, I guess you could say, takeaways from the losing teams this weekend, because I want to focus on the teams that lost and not the teams that are moving on, because I'm going to have another episode later in the week where I kind of focus on them and the teams that are left. So I want to focus in on the teams that are lost, because this is going to probably be the last time until after the Super Bowl that I really talk about them. A lot of them, for sure. So, the NBA sees it's having problems. It's been unpredictable. And they're dealing with COVID massively right now. 2 games have been canceled this weekend due to COVID. And personally, I don't see how the NBA can push its way through the season like the MLB did if this continues to go in the direction it seems to be going. There is so much more travel in the NBA than when you look at the NFL. And so I think the chances of a player getting exposed to COVID are a lot higher in the NBA than they were in the NFL. Very similar to the chances to get exposed in the MLB. Here's the thing, though. It's what's going on in the NBA. It's crazy. And let me just kind of give you an example of travel to think about it, because a lot of us think, oh, what the NFL did worked very, very well. We had some COVID outbreaks, yes, but we moved past it. Now we're in the playoffs. We're in the divisional round of the playoffs here. Man, my nose is itchy. But we're in the divisional round of the playoffs here. And it's not like we've had to just virtually stop the season, but it feels like it's trending that way possibly for the NBA. An NBA player, depending upon their schedule, could play in 4 to 5 different arenas every single week. That's 4 to 5 different cities you're traveling into, 4 to 5 extra places to accidentally get exposed to COVID, because you're coming across many more people than you would in the NFL. Now, when you look at the NFL, they're playing in maybe 2 stadiums for every 7 days. They're not getting exposed, in my opinion, as much as an NBA player is getting exposed. And that's kind of why I feel for NBA guys right now, because I wouldn't be shocked at some point if COVID kind of, if it gets worse, that the NBA has to completely stop play for a couple days to figure out what they're going to do. If the NBA could do a bubble for the regular season, that would be great for us as fans. We would love that, because we would get NBA games consistently. We would get maybe some consistency with some of these teams. But instead, I don't think they should do that, and I don't want them to do that, because, as a player, I wouldn't want to sign up for that. I wouldn't want to be in a bubble for 8 months. After having to be in a bubble for, 6 months? 5 months? For the NBA playoffs? That'd be crazy. I just hope the NBA can find a safe way to continue to push through this season, because I feel like we need basketball. This country needs basketball, because after football, there's nothing. It's basketball or nothing. So we need basketball as sports fans, and I think as a country we need it. And I'm looking forward to the continuation of the NBA season. I hope they can get COVID under control, and I hope that the NBA season doesn't have to get delayed and pushed back at some point. But I feel like it's inevitable if COVID continues to go the way it's going in the NBA. I feel like we are on the other side of it, though. Not COVID itself, but the vaccine is right down the pike. I mean, we can see it with our own eyes. Some people are getting it right now as we speak. So let's just try to keep, figuring it out, going as we go, because that vaccine is right around the corner for everybody. And I cannot wait for the day that life returns back to normal. I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to take a short break real quick, and then I'm going to get into my takeaways from the teams that are no longer in the playoffs. I think you're going to like that. I'll be right back. All right, everybody. I'm back. And over the weekend, like I've kind of mentioned, I said I was going to talk about the losing teams. 6 NFL teams were eliminated from playoff contention, and their season is over. 8 teams are still alive, and they are continuing. And I want to focus on the 6 teams that their season is now over and what's next for them and what the future might hold. Now I'm going to talk about them in order of when they lost, because I think that's the easiest. So the first team that lost over the weekend was the Indianapolis Colts. And let's be honest, out of all the teams that lost this weekend, I like what the future holds for the Colts the best out of all of them. They're young on both sides of the football, and I think they are one move away from being an immediate contender. And I don't know what that move is. Maybe some more pass rush, maybe an elite level quarterback. I don't know, but I think they're just one move away. I think they need to make sure they retain T.Y. Hilton. I think that would be for the best for the team. Now, like I said, team is much better than many expected them to be. And they were my most underrated team coming into this season. I loved what they were building. I loved what they were doing. And, they have a couple question marks, yes. Now, I don't know. And one of those question marks is the quarterback position. And I don't know who the quarterback of the future is going to be for the Colts. I wish I did, but I don't. And I don't even know who it's going to be next year. Jacoby Brissett set to be a free agent. Phil Rivers set to be a free agent. That would leave the only quarterback on the roster as Jacob Eason, and I don't think he's the guy. I think they're going to have to bring somebody in or retain somebody. And Frank Reich, I almost said Frank Rivers. Frank Reich wants Rivers to return next year, but we'll see. Many think it could possibly be Carson Wentz. I don't like that fit. I don't care if those two were successful in the past. I don't want Wentz in Indy. But I wouldn't mind seeing if they do go get a guy, maybe trade for Matthew Stafford. Because I think Matthew Stafford, talent-wise, top 7 quarterback still in the league. Top 7. I might be generous, but I love Matthew Stafford. So I wouldn't mind seeing Matthew Stafford move from the Lions to the Colts. And maybe let's get Stafford a ring, baby. But regardless of who it is, I'm excited for the Colts' future. And I'm going to make a bold statement about the Colts here. I personally believe within the next 3 to 4 years that the Indianapolis Colts will be competing and participating in the Super Bowl. That is how much I like the Colts moving forward. You can debate me on it all you want. There's nothing you can say that will change my mind. I can promise you that. What Frank Reich, Chris Ballard, and Jim Irsay are working together to build is impressive. It is impressive. Especially considering just how, quickly how they adjusted after losing Andrew Luck to retirement suddenly. They adjusted great. And that's why I like them a lot moving forward. Plus their offensive line, Jonathan Taylor, they got a couple good young receivers, and T.Y. Hilton if they can retain him. That team moving forward is a team that I like quite a bit. Now the next team in order of when they lost is the Seattle Seahawks. And for those that have been following along for a while, they were my most overrated team coming into the season. And they made me bite my tongue early. I will say that. But I've watched this team all season. And this is a team that, again, I've not loved all season, but at the beginning they made me bite my tongue. And even though they won their division, I feel like I was right. The Seahawks couldn't compete with a team with a quarterback that started a guy that played in the Alliance of American Football League. That then they were forced to replace with a guy who just broke his thumb 2 weeks ago, had surgery, and had 3 pins in his finger and couldn't even throw the football in an efficient fashion. Let's be honest. That's not good. The Seahawks seemed to have been a team that was absolutely broken for weeks. Offensively, defensively, they just couldn't figure it all out. Something was wrong somewhere. I don't know what happened to them. That Arizona Cardinals game on Sunday Night Football, and then they fell off a cliff. The offense was great to start the year, like I mentioned, but then they hit that Cardinals game and off a cliff they went. After that, Russ was broke for the whole season. And then the Seahawks defense got healthy. They brought in Carlos Dunlap. And that defense looked impressive. It looked decent compared to earlier in the year when they couldn't stop a thing. But now the Seahawks are in the same spot they were last year to end the season. Last year in the season, they advanced a little further in the playoffs, but they're still in the same spot. What's their defense like? They still have no pass rush. Their offensive line still has too many holes to fill. And Russ has never gotten the help from the organization. The organization has completely ignored the offensive line problems like they don't exist. Wipe it clean. Let's just give them weapons. Let's just give them DK, Tyler Lockett. Let's just load the back end up of the defense, and let's see how it does. And that's a massive problem, because without a pass rush, a guy can't cover for 8 seconds. Not in the new NFL. He can't do it. I hope for Russell Wilson's sake, as much as I don't necessarily love the guy, I hope for his sake that the Seattle Seahawks quit ignoring the offensive line problems and get him help. Now, the problem with that is that Jamal Adams trade kind of screws them, because they don't necessarily have all their draft capital and pieces to give them that. But it's not like they're very good at drafting in the first round anyways. So Get Russ some help on the offensive line. I hate to see a guy with so much talent waste his time, and it feels like waste his career for a team that doesn't seem to want to help him. Help him out. Jeez. I don't even like the Seahawks, I'm saying this. Oh. Moving on from them, though. The next team that lost was the Washington football team. One of the more impressive and best stories in my mind of the NFL season was Ron Rivera and Alex Smith just fighting through all the adversity and doing everything they could. Ron Rivera joining a team that had so many issues and so many problems, a team without a name. I mean, everything that he had to, and then fighting cancer, and then, I mean, impressive that he even got them to the playoffs, especially considering their quarterback woes, their offensive struggles, but they did play in the NFC East, so that helped them out quite a bit. One thing I learned from this weekend from them, though, I like their future moving forward because that defense is very, very, very good, especially with Chase Young. Chase Young, he's going to be an elite level pass rusher for years to come. Hopefully he stays healthy, but Taylor Heinicke should be given a shot and a chance to compete with anyone that the football team brings in to play quarterback. He deserves it. He played better than any quarterback that started a game for the Washington football team this season. They started 4 quarterbacks: Kyle Allen, Alex Smith, Dwayne Haskins, and Taylor Heinicke. Taylor Heinicke outperformed them all with his lone start. No quarterback for the Washington football team had played that good all year. So just out of respect to that, I think he should be given a chance to compete. And let's be honest, Ron Rivera likes Taylor Heinicke. Taylor Heinicke was with the Panthers in Carolina when Ron Rivera was there. So was Kyle Allen. Kyle Allen was brought over and traded for once Ron Rivera got the job. Taylor Heinicke was brought in when they had a quarterback problem because Ron Rivera knew he was going to be able to perform at the level he was comfortable with. And Ron Rivera knew this is a guy I can trust. And I don't know what the future of the quarterback position is for the Washington football team. And I don't know what the future holds for them, but they have a very good receiver in Terry McLaurin. And they have a very good defense with a front 5 led by Chase Young. And their defense is legit. They have Antonio Gibson in the backfield. I like what their team has. They also have a good offensive line. They do. And again, the future of the quarterback position on their team is what's going to hinge on their success. But I can guarantee you this. I would bet you that Kyle Allen and Taylor Heinicke will be competing for starting time next year, regardless of who they bring in. Because those are guys that Ron Rivera is comfortable with. Ron Rivera is a defensive-minded coach. He's old school. He doesn't necessarily need that star quarterback, that guy that can throw for 5,000, 4,000 yards. No, what he needs is consistency. He just needs a good quarterback that won't make mistakes and will manage the game well. Heinicke did that on Saturday. Kyle Allen has done that well in his career. Alex Smith has done that well. And the reason they cut Dwayne Haskins is because he couldn't even manage to simply follow simple COVID protocols. Hopefully the next guy they bring in, I wouldn't doubt that if he's similar to this, you could see a guy, I'm trying to think of some names that possibly would be like this, that are in the draft. Okay, Mac Jones and Kyle Trask would definitely be guys that could manage well, I think. So maybe one of those young guys. I don't know what kind of veterans are going to be out there on the free agent market, but anybody that's a decent game manager will get a look from the Washington football team. Moving on to the next team, the Titans. And after not being able to get anything going on the ground versus the Ravens, the Titans go into the offseason knowing one thing. They're probably going to lose the guy that calls the plays in Arthur Smith. Arthur Smith has done so much for that offense because everybody knows that the Titans are going to come into the game and are going to run the football. And what has Arthur Smith made sure that they're able to do? Regardless of who they play, they run the football. Now, have they consistently been great at it recently? They've struggled. Yes, they've struggled. The Ravens shut Derrick Henry down. But in almost every single game that Arthur Smith has been the offensive coordinator, everybody knows they're going to come in and turn around and hand the ball to Derrick Henry. We have to stop him. And so many teams just haven't been able to do it. Now, losing him is a big problem for them. It's a big problem. because he is in line to interview with every single team that has a head coaching vacancy right now in the league. I feel like he's going to end up with a head coaching job because of, I mean, look at the odds. 6 of 7, because I don't know if he's going to interview for Philly, but if I had to guess, if he's not hired, he'll probably interview. And the question now is, how much longer? This is my big question about the Titans. Can they find pass rush? Because they have none. Their defense, they have guys that can cover, but their defense doesn't have any single person that can rush the passer very well. So the question that I have about the Titans organization, because their offense and their success seems to ride on the back of Derrick Henry, is how much longer can Derrick Henry dominate like this? He's 27 years old. Will his body be able to handle another season where he gets 400 touches? We'll see, but I don't fully believe he will. I think next year will be the year we see a drop in Henry's production, and next year will begin his decline into just being an above-average running back. Feels like a bold take for me there. But running backs don't last forever, especially running backs that get that many touches and that high of a usage rate. Moving on to the next team, don't even want to talk about them, the Chicago Bears. They're not in a great spot at all. They have no franchise quarterback. Their best receiver, Allen Robinson, is set to be a free agent. And they don't have great draft position to go get a guy that could be a franchise-changing quarterback. I don't think any of the guys after Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields, from what I've seen, are going to be guys that are massive franchise changers. They're just going to be maybe at best good, close to great quarterbacks maybe, but I don't see anybody else in this draft other than those two. It's Lawrence, Fields, the field after that. And I think the Bears, and this is just my opinion, I think the Bears need to take a look in the mirror and be honest with themselves. They need to fire Ryan Pace, the GM. They need to fire Matt Nagy. They need to start fresh. They're going to have to move pieces to get some draft capital. I think they might have to rebuild. That's just my thoughts. I mean, there's no way. Mitch is not a guy you want. Mitch has been bad. Foles was bad. Like, they don't have a quarterback on their roster right now that I think can carry that team to victory. And it feels like other teams might have a guy and then a pretty decent backup. And the Bears just have decent backups starting for them. And it's a problem. Because they had decent backups starting for them, and they made the playoffs with that. Because they started off so hot. I think it would be, and a lot of people are saying that maybe the Bears should trade for Deshaun Watson. I don't see a lot of people in the national media saying that, but a lot of people that I speak to on a daily basis, they're saying that maybe that should be what the Chicago Bears do. That would be a grave and terrible mistake for the organization. The pieces you'd have to give up to get Deshaun is high, very high, and I think Deshaun's going to stay in Houston. I think the owner, the GM, and the new head coach, when they hire him, are all going to sit down. They're going to have a conversation. Watson's going to say what he wants to say. The organization owner, he's going to say what he wants to say. The GM's going to give his input. The head coach is going to give his input. And they're going to have a very long conversation. And I think Watson will realize, hey, I'll stay here. I'll stay. But we'll see. I could be very, very wrong there because Watson seems to be more of a problem with the organization's belief in how they're run other than what they're doing with the team. And that's the massive problem, because when you have a guy that completely is done with what you're doing with your beliefs and stuff, it's very hard for him to want to come back. But I think he will, because holding out is, it's bad. It's with the new rules in the CBA, when you hold out, it's not good for you. But like I said, it'd be a mistake for the Bears to get Watson. I think if they did that, the Bears would be in the same position, record-wise, that the Texans were in this year. Because the Bears' offensive line is just as bad as the Texans, in my opinion. Bears' weapons compared to the Texans' weapons, if they lose AR, they ain't got no one. They ain't got no one. So I don't feel confident in the Bears moving forward, and I don't feel confident at all in the next team. My team. The Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't know what happened to the Steelers this year. I just don't know what happened. I don't know how you start and win 11 games straight and then just run into a brick wall and fall off a cliff like the Steelers did this year. I don't know how it happens. The future feels grim. It feels dark for the Steelers. It does not feel great. Juju, James Conner, and Bud Dupree all set to hit the market. I don't see how the Steelers retain one of them. Even if I don't want them to, I don't see how they would be able to do it. And I think losing Juju, as much hate as he gets, he is the glue that holds that receiver room together. I think he is the most valuable receiver that the Steelers have on the roster. And he's one of the most underrated players on that offense. Even though he seems to be the top guy, it feels like Deontay Johnson gets the love and Juju gets all the hate. And I kind of don't like that because I kind of like Juju a lot. It's been tough to like Juju, but I still do. And I still believe in Juju as a receiver, but I don't think the Steelers are going to bring most of their free agents back. And if you watched last night's game and saw the ending with Ben sitting on the bench, Marquise Pouncey coming up, and they're sitting there crying. Juju walks up and talks to them, and then you see the video of Juju just going as he's walking in the locker room. You don't feel confident that you're going to have Ben Roethlisberger next year or Marquise Pouncey. Those two are a tag team. Pouncey has said on numerous occasions, when Ben goes, I go. That's how it's going to be. While Pouncey's not a top 5 center in the league. Pouncey's the leader on the team. Ben Roethlisberger, franchise quarterback, guy that has made me love football. Losing them would be detriment to the Steelers organization. I feel like this topic deserves to have its own video, have its own episode. I'm going to do some research. I'm going to do some digging. I'm going to talk to some people. And I'm going to drop an episode strictly on what the Steelers should do. Because I feel like the Steelers, out of all the teams that lost in the wild card, their future is just odd. And as a Steeler fan, it doesn't sit well with me. I still feel uncomfortable talking about possibly seeing Ben retire, and it just doesn't sit well in my stomach. But that's all I got for today. Hope you enjoyed this episode. If you do, make sure to share it with a friend. Subscribe. Rate and review. Do all the things you got to do if you like a podcast. Because sharing it, helping me grow, would be super appreciative of me. I got major changes coming up in my life. And, I don't know how I'm going to continue to do this, what's going to happen. For a while, it might just be audio only again. Sorry for the YouTube watchers, but again, I'm excited for the future that I hold for myself. I'm moving from PA to Florida for school, so it's gonna be fun. I'm gonna enjoy it, and I'm gonna stay safe. Everybody, don't worry. But thanks for listening. It really means a lot. I was kind of really about to open up there, I felt like, but now we'll save it for later. See y'all. Have a great week.